Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy. I'm on with my co-host, Matty B. As always, if you're watching the video feed, you won't be seeing him today because he is at a player recruiting combine for high school athletes, which is going to be our main topic. And we're going to just get some of Coach's thoughts on those as he calls in. So, Coach, as your players are preparing for these, what do you recommend for them to get the most out of events like this?
Well, the big thing going into events like this is you want to look at what are you doing to prepare for it ahead of time. So for a lot of guys, you should be conditioning. There should have been consistent weightlifting, at least at bare bones minimum. You want to be starting after Christmas break with all the holiday food and all the holiday stuff going on. That's typically a good time to get yourself back in the swing of things. You want to be in as good a shape as possible because with ours tonight out at Bald Eagle, there were a lot of colleges that were there. So for a lot of young players, it's almost like a free job interview. Our players here are lucky enough that our boosters help pay for the $10 registration fee, but they get tested with the bench press, a lot of the NFL shuttle run, the regular shuttle run, 40-yard dashes time. So they have all these colleges here that are on the site seeing how you perform. And for those kids that take it seriously and are serious about being recruited, they really walk away with a lot of really good information. The thing that I like is that Mr. Billy Splain, the guy who runs our Western PA football and our Keystone recruiting site, he talked with our kids tonight and talked about how important it was to have a Twitter account and to use your Twitter positively in the recruiting process. And I think that was something that we really haven't touched on this show recently. But it's important that you're engaging coaches and you're being active in the process, because if you're waiting for them to respond to you, you're probably behind in the recruiting game.
And I think we did touch on that just slightly a bit when we went over NCAA rules a little bit ago, because I think one of the things that we talked about was how coaches can't comment directly on players until after they've already signed. So until that moment comes, you have to be the one to take that initiative. It's not like a coach is going to publicly call you out to give you a feeler. It's just against the rules at this point. So you have to be the one that puts it out there, has a professional profile. We've seen things where even in the NFL draft where players are posting videos and things that get picked up. Look at Bosa this year. He went through and tried to clean his up, but someone had already archived a bunch of comments he made. And now he's going into an NFL locker room in a very uncomfortable situation for him that it has to be addressed by the media almost every day. So as high schoolers, you got to know, hey, I need to get this stuff cleaned up. And if you really want to be recruited, you almost, like Matt said, have to look at it as a job interview, because they're investing 4 years of money and time into you. So you have to show them that it's worthwhile. I mean, a very slim number of athletes are going to get picked up just on their athleticism, don't you think, Matt?
Absolutely. And a big part to that is the majority of them are going to have to be kids that go to camps. And so if there's a particular school, and typically you don't even really want to focus on the big ones, you just want to get a date first. So sometimes it may be a Division II or a smaller school that's willing to offer you and put something together first. And then once you have that first offer, then you can start playing some of those other schools against each other and saying, well, I have an offer from this school. And once you have that first offer, it definitely seems to help in terms of the recruiting process, that you can kind of start leveraging schools, especially within the same conference, and start seeing one fall after another. I actually had a situation where a coach shared with me that they had a kid offer from an Ivy League school, and within a matter of days, every other one followed suit, because it was a matter of keeping up with the Joneses and trying to steal recruits from each other.
And that's something that I know we haven't really talked on. And as someone myself that has followed recruiting for over 15 years or so now, which isn't weird in any way, let's just put that out there, you can see it's called an offer sheet. So once an athlete puts up their offer sheet on, say, one of the big recruiting sites, you'll be able to know what schools have contacted them. And realistically, only the player is able to update that list. So by using a Twitter, you can leverage that and control your own offer sheet. A lot of people put like their top 5, top 10 in their profile, or have like a pinned tweet where it's an image that they wrote in like notes on their phone or something. And you can actually keep a list of your offer sheet, which is helpful not only to you, but as Matt said, to other schools, because a lot of the schools, especially D3 and D2, like Matt mentioned, they only recruit regionally off the bat. So if they see a rival from a neighboring state has offered you, then they're going to be interested. They'll request your tape, and they might not be able to see you. You might not have the money to go travel across state lines to another camp. So they're only going to go off word of mouth and your offer sheet. If you have offers from every, let's say, D2 school in the area, you're more prone to get an offer from other schools as well that aren't even in your area. So keep that up to date and make sure that you keep that in mind too whenever you're updating your stuff. It's not only you that's going to see that, it's going to be other recruits and coaches, and it's kind of like your resume at that point, because you're only going to have high school experience, so they need to see who else is in on you. And it also helps to keep contact with certain coaches too, because I think that's another thing that 24/7 and a lot of the recruiting sites keep track of. Who is your main contact at that school? Because there's been a lot of recent fake recruiting type deal that we talked about recently, where
Absolutely.
if you don't put out your contacts, then these recruiting sites can't go back and double check your facts. And they have said this year, after a fake recruit got picked up in the database, that they need to verify each recruit before they put them in. So they will check the school database, like they'll contact your high school just to verify that you're real, you're a student, you played, you're on their huddle. I think a lot of the recruits are already in max preps or something similar, where they can see your stats right off the bat. That might not be the case for linemen, where I think a lot of the fake recruiting is very prevalent. You make up a lineman because they don't have stats. It's not like they keep pancakes or whatever at the high school level. So you need to be verified by like a newspaper clipping, something like that you can put in your Twitter profile where they talk to you. I think almost every local newspaper does a high school football preview. Put that stuff out there. Anytime you're mentioned, just put it on your Twitter profile. Anything that can help you publicly is what you want on your profile. Do you have anything else you want to add to that, Matt?
I think you hit the nail on the head. A big part is using your huddle account to your advantage, and within the first 3 to 5 plays, you want to have your best ones. You don't want to bury those highlights deep in your thing. You want to start off. Those first couple got to be the best of the best that you're offering, so that a coach may only have a couple seconds to watch over your highlights. And if you're wasting time with a bunch of clips that you're not even really involved in the play, it's gonna take away from that. So you want to stand out, make your splash plays early, so that you can really catch their eye and hopefully parlay that into something meaningful. And having that attached to your Twitter profile is another step in that process that you're able to use to help out, get yourself more exposure.
And that's a great point, Matt. And I would even take it a step further. If you're going to do different cuts, just do shorter videos, like a minute or two. I think a lot of people, under 3 minutes, I say would be the max if you're going to put it on Twitter. A lot of people are going to be more prone to click on that if it's very short compared to if you have an 18-minute slog where all your plays are at the back end of the video because you think you're building up. And I think that's a mistake a lot of recruits make. Like Matt said, put your best stuff first. It's better just to show like 3 to 5 quick, awesome plays, and then follow that up with a link to like, hey, watch my full video on Huddle or something like that. So you can clip that for Twitter. Like if you upload the video, Twitter will let you trim the video that you're uploading to only include the beginning, and then just include a link as a reply or something to the full video for coaches to see, because then you're going to be able to get a couple people watching, and they might tell their friends, or there's all kind of coaches out there. Make sure, here's another tip too, make sure you use like coaching hashtags. Like if you know what offense you run, put that out there. I know we always joke about Wing T as a hashtag, but we've gotten great response to our podcast here, just people picking it up based on us talking about that kind of coaching stuff on Twitter. So use that to your advantage. Make sure you put what position you play and things like that, because others might pick it up. And, of course, include your region and your area. You don't have to give exactly your hometown. You can give your high school team. But let people know where you're located, because you don't want to give off something crazy. A lot of people put, like, random United States locations in your Twitter or somewhere like Antarctica or something as a joke. But you really don't want that, because coaches don't know where you're located, and then it comes down to the next step. Where are you willing to play?
And using your real name is a part to help that too. That if you're making some ridiculous nickname as your name, it's that much more difficult to find you when you're trying to find someone. It's easy. When the other day I just was looking up a coach, and it was really helpful being able to find their name, and I was like, oh, this is the guy I'm looking for, and started following them because they're interested in some of our guys. So it's a two-way street.
Yeah, and definitely, even if you can't get the username that's the same, let's say you have a generic name like John Smith, there's no way you're going to get John Smith. You can try your number, like John Smith 88, like you might not be able to get that. But you can put your full name in your bio, or you can make it your name. It doesn't have to be your handle. Like, at least make it your name. I see a lot of people that put their number or whatever, like wide receiver WR88, as like keeping with my example. John Smith WR88 in their name. That way you know that it's a wide receiver. I will say I've heard a lot of people talk about having two profiles, where you have your recruiting one and then you have like a personal one. If you do that, don't think that your other one that might not be public is going to be unable to be found by other schools. So you can post whatever off the rails, things that aren't appropriate, because let's be honest, I've seen the scenario where other high school kids are jealous of you for getting a scholarship. They put out your fake profile information at the other coach, like, hey, did you know your athlete's doing this? Puts a bunch of screenshots of your other tweets that you thought were hidden, and guess what? You're stuck. Now you have to explain that. So if you're serious about getting recruited, I would say only have one. Use your real name. I mean, I do that now, but because what is the difference? If you're not going to be able to say it in public, why are you posting it on Twitter?
Absolutely, and that goes with the legal end of things too. If you're posting stuff in terms of like drug and alcohol references, that's the fastest way to get yourself the bad kind of publicity. So avoid all that stuff, because it's never anything that's going to help you be successful unless you're getting into that industry.
Yeah, and same with like friends and things like that. You and your friends might be posting inside jokes and things that others might seem offensive, but then just think, are they really your friends? Because you're going to get to the next level. Do you really want to be bogged down by any type of controversy if it's the next step in your life? Like, it's a big decision for you to pick. And yeah, you might not end up there for 4 years. You get in, a lot of people transfer. Maybe you don't end up playing sports for the full 4 years or whatever. But at least it's your first step in getting a career. Very, very small number of people make it to the professional leagues. But fortunately now there are a lot of other options. You have arena football, you have Canadian football leagues, you have stuff overseas now. I think Germany has a great league where they're trying to recruit American guys after the fact. So even if you don't get that D1 scholarship offer, you may still be able to play at the professional level somewhere. So you definitely want to keep it clean in case that happens. Or what if you get into coaching? Because that stuff will resurface. People will be able to find it, even if you delete it. So just be safe. Any cons, Matt, to go into a combine that you could think of?
Well, the big con is if you're serious about wanting an offer, but you haven't put any work in, then it can hurt you as well. Because then on the flip side, if you go in prepared and you're treating it like a job interview and you score well, you can boost your stock. But if they're watching your tape and they're interested, and you come in fat because you've been laying up all winter drinking beer, then it's going to come back and really hurt you, because you're not going to be in good shape. You're not going to score. You're not going to test well. You're not going to jump off. Why are they going to invest that time, that scholarship, that money whenever you're not showing that you're willing to put the effort in on your side?
And that's exactly right. Think of it like the NFL Combine. you see a lot of people that botch the combine, and then they have one last chance at their pro day for their college team. Think of that for your high school, except no big-time college coach is really going to go to every single high school to give you a chance to make it up. It's just not realistically going to happen. If you go like your junior year and you bomb, you only have one more chance your senior year.
I would argue that. I almost think if you bomb that year, I almost think unless you do something absolutely phenomenal, you're really, really going to be behind, because everything now, they're jumping to the junior class. They're starting to get boards ready of the top prospects, and you're going to slip through the cracks. So that's going to be something that's going to come back and bite you, especially if you don't test well. So I think if you're playing in a bigger school, you might be able to get a little bit of leeway because of the level of competition. But for kids that play in smaller schools like ours, if you really flub up, it could potentially hurt you if you aren't able to put up the tape and the other, all the other measurable things.
I could build off that and say I could see it both ways. You always have a chance to build yourself back up, especially if you perform at the peak level. I think the one thing that could really kill you, though, is grades, because you always see someone that is top of the combine, a great name, look out for this kid, and then they immediately fall off the face of the earth, and everyone's wonder what happened to that guy. Well, you know what happened to him. His grades didn't make the cut, and he lost his offer at so-and-so school. Now he's going the JUCO route. You might see him on a Netflix documentary. You might not. You might never hear of him again. So definitely it's not just the combine performance. I don't want to scare you and say if you bomb one, I think you do have a chance to build yourself back up if you work hard, and you also have to perform during the season. So if you bomb your combine going into your junior year, you better use that as a learning experience and get in mad shape for the actual season so that you have some tape that then you can send out before you try your senior year. If you bomb your senior year, it's pretty much a lost cause. So if you feel like you're going to go that route, that would be my con. Don't go.
Well, and there's another part to that, too, that you got to look at what kind of combine you're going to, because there's a lot of people that are they're having get-rich schemes where they're saying, come to this all-star performance clinic, and you have to pay $500, $1,000. There's insane amounts of money that they're saying, you've been chosen to participate in this camp. You shouldn't have to pay for some of these camps that are basically a ripoff, that they're trying to make money off of your name. So for people that can't afford to go to a lot of camps, I think you pick one, maybe you go to a college, because if you're picking the next 4 years on what school you're going to be going to, it may help to get a feel for what the coaches are like, so that you can see, I may like this college, but if the coaching style, the staff, the style, the philosophy of play doesn't fit what you have, then it's not a good fit. You got to find the right fit for your skill set and the program, because that's going to be the stuff that's going to lead to you transitioning better to the next level.
And I'll build on that, and I want to get your thoughts on this. I always think that you should shoot for one higher. Like, D1 offensive linemen are like 6'5", 300 pounds. If you're a high school lineman that's only maybe 6 foot, 250, maybe you're not going to get that D1 offer, but you start to go to a D2 combine to try to see where you're really going to get evaluated. You can go to a camp at a bigger school in central Pennsylvania, like a Penn State camp, and try to get noticed. But if you don't have the measurables, you really have to kind of think and find schools where you will be a fit. It's not just all scheme at that point. If I know that in high school I'm only running a 5'4", 40-yard dash, they're not going to give me a wide receiver scholarship at Penn State. Like, let's just be realistic. It's not going to happen. So try to find not just schemes that you fit into, but what level you're going to be able to play. Because honestly, if you want to play sports in college, you can 100% make it happen. I've seen people play at the D1 level that haven't even played college football or hadn't even played high school football. I mean, I had a relative that did that. Walked on at a D1, now not the championship, not the bowl level, but the sub level, whatever that's considered now, FCS or FBS. But they walked on as a wide receiver on one of those schools and actually played for a year or two. I can't remember. But they didn't even play high school football. So if you want to play for a while, if you want to play and you're serious, you have to hit the gym, put in the work, and then get yourself out there and give yourself a shot. Sure, you might have to walk on, but that's going to be a decision that you have to make. But the combine's the first step to getting that exposure. If you don't do that, then you have no shot at all. Do you have anything else you want to add, Matt?
I think you hit on a lot of good points. One of the things this was kind of a recommendation for sometimes it's tough and maybe ego gets in the way, maybe different things factor in that you're thinking, what level do you fit in? If you really do think that you're D1 material, look at some of the smaller Division I schools. Like, so for our area, it was like the Patriot League. So schools like Bucknell or Lehigh that are considered Division I, go to their camp and see what they evaluate you as. And if they're serious and you do have that talent, now we start getting into that, where if you're not drawing any interest from them, then maybe you do have to start looking at Division II or looking at maybe even a JUCO. You look at how many players like Cam Newton transferred to a junior college, get a reboot, and then because they have the actual skill to do that stuff, they move on to the premier Division I programs.
And I wouldn't even limit this just to football either, because basketball, it's very similar, or any sport is going to be similar. You got to find a level that they're comfortable offering you, and then you have to make that decision, because sure, like Matt said, you might get a look at Bucknell or some other D1 school. Maybe they do want to offer you, but you might not play right away. You might be able to play immediately if you go the step down and take a D2 scholarship, get the same full ride, everything paid for, so you get your education, because you still have to work in the classroom once you get accepted, because if you don't make grades, you're not going to play. And there's no really, I guess, paper classes. I mean, you hear about a lot about it at the big schools, but at the smaller level, they're not going to cut you any slack to get you playing. You're going to have to earn it in the classroom. So yeah, that's another decision you have to think about. Sure, can you play on the D1 level? Are you actually going to play a good bit? Or are you just fine getting your education and being part of a team? Whereas if you take another school's offer at a smaller level, you can play immediately for 4 years. So you definitely have to weigh all your options when you're looking at this stuff. But do you have anything else for the combine stuff, Matt?
No, I just think it's being prepared. It's doing your best, and then following up with some of those. If you have an opportunity to meet a coach, to go back out and follow up with stuff on Twitter, with the social media stuff, maintain those connections, because you never know. Looking at now that with the transfer portal, the things that you're looking at. Just because you're in one place doesn't mean that you couldn't transfer out and move up into another spot.
Yeah, very true. You always have other options. You got to find what's comfortable, and hopefully you find a coaching staff that sticks with you and doesn't get cut at the last stretch of time for you as you're recruiting, because I would hate to get players that commit to a place only to find out that the coaches that recruited them for 4 years are on the way out. And that's happened to me playing college ball, and I'm sure it happened to a lot of other people. So let's get into high tempo, Matt. You got anything for us this week?
The one story, and I don't know if you caught this, how about the Jets are shopping Le'Veon Bell right now? He's blew off all the voluntary workouts, and now they're exploring options to see what his cap value is. They're saying there's a good chance that he may not get cut this year, but they're looking into possibly next year. It's an easier move for them to try to either move him or cut him, because he's coming into the mandatory part of the training. He's completely out of shape. He's up to like 260.
Matt, am I shocked? No.
Yes, you are.
No, I'm not, because I called this.
He's been training. He took a year off, so he's like peak athletic shape right now.
For what? A fullback? 260. That's a fullback size, Matt. I can't even think of what running back played at 260. Unless you're
Eddie Lacy.
Successfully?
I mean, you didn't say successfully. You just said who played at it. Jerome Bettis probably played at 260.
I don't know. I feel like Jerome Bettis looked bigger because he was shorter, but I could be wrong. I don't know if I actually know. I've never seen him except for on the TV. I've never seen him in person. So, I don't know. You got anything else for us for High Tempo?
No, that was the big story that I saw. That I know for as much as we followed it did surprise me, because I did think, it reminds me of guys that say, oh, yeah, I'm working out with a personal trainer, and then in 3 years they never put any weight on.
But you know what's funny? That my man T.O., everyone laughed at him for actually working out in his driveway so people could watch and make sure that he was in shape. But then everyone else, they just take their word for it. Like, you're just sitting at home or going on your yacht and not working out at all. I'm actually a little bit surprised that you didn't go college football. Did you see your man, Francois, is going to play for Lane Kiffin?
Yes, I did. Walking on.
What are your thoughts on that?
People deserve second chances, but it just was a situation where it wasn't going to work out in Tallahassee. I think it was the best move for all. His name was out in the transfer portal and didn't get the offer that he was looking for. And with what Kiffin was doing there, I think he stands a good chance of resurrecting his career. But I don't know how that's going to play out, because I think a lot of the magic that happened was when Briles was there with Kiffin at FAU.
Well, we'll see. I think it's a good spot. Kiffin's good with quarterbacks. So, I mean, why not take a shot at the lower level and see if you can get them to a conference championship? It's really his only way to get to the next level, I believe. I don't know how much more experience he has or how many eligibility years he has left, because he played against Michigan in that Orange Bowl. That was how many years ago now? So he has to be closing in.
That was before Alabama destroyed him.
Yeah, I mean, that was what? He has to be a senior, right? Or 1 or 2 years left, max?
Yeah, it's going into his senior year, because he got pushed in as a freshman or sophomore, and then going into that year at Alabama, he blew his knee out, and it completely just tanked all that momentum that he had going forward.
Yeah, because he was good that first year, and any injury can knock a player out. It's sad to see. But it kind of reminds me of his decision to take the drop to the lower level. I think could play out better for him. If you remember the quarterback, I can't remember his name, he transferred from Notre Dame to Florida, and then he never really earned that starting spot, at least at FIU. He should be able to get the starting spot and play a full last year.
Golson transferred over to Florida State from Notre Dame and was inconsistent with playing time. It was between him and Sean McGuire.
Yeah, there was another one. He went to Florida, though, but I can't remember his name. I think he played the Michigan game a couple years ago, like the opener, and then after that they booted him out because that was their excuse why Florida lost that game. They were playing their backup quarterback, because he's always the backup until they make the switch.
Double check the numbers.
All right, so I did have one more thing for High Tempo here that I wanted to talk about. Illinois defensive end, or defensive lineman, I don't know if he was a defensive end or not, Bobby Roundtree, he suffered a spinal injury in an accident swimming. So I know it's summer. You're out there in a situation where you're going to be swimming around in a pool. I would imagine he dove into a shallow pool, and it doesn't matter how big, how strong you are, if you have all that weight landing on your head, it's not a good situation, not a good scenario. So definitely be safe out there in the summer. You never want to put yourself in a situation where you could get hurt. So I hate to see accidents like this. reported, and I hate to see them when most likely they were preventable. So I hope he gets better, and I hope that there's no lasting damage for him. But I hate to see a story like that. Getting into our NFL stuff now, we also had Ben Roethlisberger. He called out Antonio Brown, or he called him out to apologize, and said that some of the locker room stuff was on him, which I think was a bold move because realistically, I don't think that it was totally on Ben Roethlisberger, because you have a guy that's going out into the public sphere. He's on television. He's on social media. He's demanding the ball, doing all this stuff. He's on the sideline doing trash can stuff. That's Antonio Brown for you. So he's out there battling, getting all the attention on him, going through all this offseason drama until he finally gets traded. Now he's sitting back, calling out Steeler wide receivers, calling out Ben Roethlisberger. It's like he can't get enough attention. He goes to the Raiders. No one's focused on them because they don't have high upside. I've seen everything from like 4 wins as they're over and under to like 5 or 6. So he's not going into a great situation. If they make the playoffs, it would be a shock by most standards. For all we know, Gruden is in the middle of tanking for a few years. We have no idea what he's doing. Last year, he gets rid of 2 of his best players. Antonio Brown chooses to go into that situation, and he's not relevant anymore. So what does he do? Keeps talking about the Steelers. And I thought Ben took the high road, apologizing, saying that he could be at fault, while also putting out news that he is out with his players and they're doing like an offensive team meeting, going out for drinks or anything like that. I don't even know what they were doing. But it was just the fact that he was putting out news that he was hanging out with his guys. He's going to have their back this year and going from there. So I think it's a great look for him to apologize. Antonio Brown is still all over the Steelers, and I don't even know where he can go from there. So he must realize that he's not on a good team, because he went from a team, the only team he played for, went from there to a new situation, so he knows what a successful franchise does to be successful. And piggybacking on the Le'Veon Bell thing Matt brought about, when you have these guys that were locker room issues, and a lot of people were laughing, saying, how are the Steelers going to be any better this year? They lost 2 of their best guys. One guy the Jets don't even want. So that's almost like addition by subtraction for the Steelers. And last year we already saw that the backfield was just as productive without him, so we don't need him. And then Antonio Brown, it's yet to be seen, because he did still demand the double coverage, and that opens up a lot of other lanes in the passing game. But at this point, you can rely on Ben Roethlisberger. He's been in the league for over a decade. The guy has to know how to read a defense and go from there. So
yep.
We'll see what it's like. Matt, you still with us? You have any thoughts on the Steelers?
Yeah, I think to kind of piggyback off of what you were saying, when you look at all the issues that were going on, it's a smart PR move for Ben to take the high road, because then if he continues his shenanigans, it makes Pittsburgh look that much better. When you're doing those kinds of things, you're recognizing maybe things weren't the best, but at least taking ownership and being willing to make up for those mistakes. I think it helps in a lot of ways, because now you're acknowledging the problem. Some of the cancer's gone. As long as you're continuing to work with the rest of the team on fixing that. And, for as much as people have said Roethlisberger's a bad teammate, there's all these videos of him doing stuff with his teammates and having them out on his boat and doing different stuff that he's been doing for years. I think he just has to keep being the leader. And as he gets older, more of that falls on his shoulders. And it's good to see him stepping up in that way. But the bottom line is, you got to do that. Otherwise, you're going to end up being a middle-of-the-road team, because the rest of the division did stuff to improve. So you have to make yourself better. And I think they added some great pieces through the draft and through free agency they got some high character guys that are going to help out, and I think you're going to see just as much, if not more, production as a result.
And I think you can look at it from the perspective of just comparing him to Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers got the same flack. We've talked about it before. People were calling him a bad teammate. What is he doing this offseason? Is he going out with his teammates? Not that I've seen, but I did see him make a cameo in Game of Thrones randomly. Like, how is that going to make... It's not like Ben Roethlisberger is doing things like that. It's not like he's the one on Dancing with the Stars or whatever the show was that Antonio Brown was on.
At least he's riding his motorcycle with a helmet now.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can laugh at the motorcycle accident, but that's honestly just an accident. It's not like he's putting himself in TV commercials like Peyton Manning did. I always argued against Peyton Manning for the amount of commercials he did. Sure, he's dedicated with the playbook and he knows how to read the defenses, but at some point, you're going to lose chemistry with players if you're not like part of the family with them. So you can be this great dad figure, which is why I think he was successful on the Broncos. That was a young team. He comes in as like the dad, Peyton Manning, hanging out, just trying not to throw those ice cream truck balls in the air that get picked off. And he can win a Super Bowl that way. But for the remainder of his career, what was he doing? Choking in the playoffs, because when it came down to it, he didn't have the rapport that you need to get players open in big games. He just didn't. He choked every year almost. I mean, his only non-choke was against Rex Grossman and the Bears. Like, let that sink in. A lot of people probably don't even know who Rex Grossman is, let alone that that's Peyton Manning's only Super Bowl win outside of the dad years with the Broncos.
Well, I mean, you should just say Devin Hester if you're going to make that comparison, because that was the year that he was taking all the kicks and punts, so there was literally no offense.
Yeah, he was it. He was their deep threat. He was almost like Tyreek Hill, and I think a lot of people are underestimating the loss for the Chiefs this year. If he truly is gone, I don't know if they ever settled that case, because I'm sure Andy Reid will make some decision that gets rid of him. But, like, what are the Chiefs? You really want to put all your eggs in the basket with Mahomes? We'll really see what he's made of this year. The Chiefs' window could be closed already, which would be hilarious, because that's the typical Andy Reid thing. 1 year, you get close, you choke, and then it's back to mediocre. But we'll see. You got to have that deep threat. Once Hester's legs went out, just because you get old at some point, the Bears, I mean, they just started to get back to that elite level this past year, built on what? Defense again. Not on offense. So that's the easier way to do it, build on defense. Anything else you want to talk about with the NFL, Matt?
Not that I've seen a whole lot of. I'm curious to see what kind of stuff's going to be coming up with the mandatory mini camps and what news is going to come. I'm seeing a lot of stuff early on with guys tearing their ACLs, and I'm wondering how much of that is them laying up during the off season and now getting back out there, straining those ligaments and causing issues.
And I think it comes down to just getting preparation and being smart about it. You don't want to overexert yourself. You see it all the time with, actually, you can even go to some of the arguments we had on past episodes talking about, like, the Maryland situation, where if you're overly exerting yourself and crazily conditioning and doing all this extra stuff, you're going to put your body in a position to break down. And in the NFL, I mean, you can't do that. Season's too long. So you almost have to be. There's a reason some of the veterans stay around, because they're smart about it. So at this point, I know we've been on and off about voluntary workouts, but I'm not a big fan for laziness reasons I've talked about before. But just be careful out there. Even high school and college kids, you don't want to get hurt right before the season for something that could easily be avoidable. So that's all I have for that. You got anything else, Matt?
Nope.
All right, picking up for some of the college talk. I already talked about the 2 football stories I had for college football. It's obviously a dead period. We did an annual college, just I don't even know, second or third year we've talked about high school combines as Matt's coming back from one. So this might be a little bit shorter of a show, but I wanted to pick up on our Big Ten story from last week, Michigan's basketball coaching search. And I will say that it was very close to turning into a complete shit show, just like I would expect. Why not? Why not just keep burning down everything that you have? I threw out a bunch of names, and it is rumored that all of the top candidates, except for Rick Pitino, I didn't hear Pitino's name mentioned, but Billy Donovan and all of those other ones, Brad Stevens, were reportedly reached out to. They're sticking with the NBA, which I expected. And the big name right now is Juwan Howard, member of the Fab Five. He seems to be the leading candidate. I don't have a problem with that. I think that would be a great fit. Look at what Penny Hardaway is doing right now at Memphis. He has possibly one of the greatest recruiting classes of all time, rivaling those Kentucky classes Calipari had with the one-and-dones. So if he can do it coming from the NBA back to his alma mater, I think that's where he went to college. Why not? Give Howard a shot, see if he could bring in some big-name recruits, and get it done. But we'll see, because there were some other names that were floated out there that Michigan was looking at that I would not be happy if they settled on. But that's coming down. Should be to a close by the end of the week. That's my feeling. I see a lot of people actually reporting that. I think at this point in the game, when you settle in on 2 or 3 candidates, including just promoting Yaklich, which I've heard. I've also heard that Shaka Smart is being considered, which would be a heartbreaker for me, because I don't think he's that good of a coach. But we'll see. Hopefully it's Howard. That's who I want at this point. But other than that, college news, let's get into the NBA.
There was one thing that I saw real quick.
Go ahead.
There was a story that was out about, they were asking Dabo Swinney about paying players and things like that, and he said if the NCAA goes to start paying players, he would consider leaving Clemson to go to the NFL. What are your thoughts as far as that transition, if that were to happen?
Man, I would not care at all. I just lost Coach Beeline to the NBA because of this situation. So, I mean, he finally had his first one-and-done player, Iggy Brezdeikis, who has come out and said today that he's staying in the NBA. So Coach Beeline leaves because he's tired of these weird, you can't pay players, but you know all the other schools are doing it. Clemson's already paying players. You want to know why Dabo wants to leave? Because he knows Clemson can't compete with the big schools. So Clemson's already paying players. They've been rumored to. And I'm not making it up. It was stated in the FBI investigation. The Clemson recruiting guy that was paying basketball players came out and said, we need to do it like the football team. That's why they're successful. I mean, how much more plain can you be, Matt? It's very clear. All their players tested positive for Ostarine. I mean, what they like 3 of the 5 that they tested? That's a ridiculous amount of players. For an osteoporosis drug, you're not getting that from Gold's Gym down the street. You're not getting that. You're getting that from a trainer inside.
Yeah.
Dabo basically admitted that he came out and said, yeah, we might have given that to them. Yeah, you might have on purpose, or you might have by accident, because you never clarified on that. So I think he's scared. Think about it. What was he known for before they started to get these great recruiting classes? Clemsoning. They got their ass destroyed by West Virginia. 70 points in a BCS bowl game, Matt. How much more embarrassed can you get? And that wasn't a Rich Rod team. That was what? Was that Bill Stewart or Holgerson?
Yep. That's exactly who that was.
So, I mean, you're a Florida State guy. That has to make you more mad than it makes me. The only thing that really annoys me is the fact that it came out pretty rumored that I think Rashawn Gary, when he was getting recruited at Michigan, one of his uncles had said that Clemson was offering him like $100,000. Like they just found an uncle that they were trying to pay off to get Rashawn to come to Clemson. I think the uncle came out. I don't know if he was actually his uncle or just like, a guy he knew that said he was his uncle, or if it was just something else out of the ordinary. But Clemson comes out of nowhere on that recruit, and then it comes down to Michigan and Clemson on the final day. It's just weird that Rashawn Gary would go from Alabama and Michigan as the top 2 schools to randomly squeaking in Clemson at the last day, and at the same time, a random uncle says that Clemson's offering $100,000 if he picks Clemson. That's not a coincidence. Why would Alabama drop out of that final conversation unless they got outpaid by Clemson? So, I mean, what are your thoughts on it?
That's one that it wouldn't surprise me, because if you're competing now that you level that playing field and you're not secretly paying players under the table, it absolutely makes sense to jump, because you're going to be dealing the same kind of shenanigans you're dealing with at the NFL level right now. It's going to trickle down. It's going to become who's getting paid and how much are they getting paid and how are they, you're going to see that same jealousy that's in the NFL and the competition of who can make the most. It'll start trickling down to college, and then it'll just be the secret recruiting for high school players.
I mean, honestly, it wouldn't even matter, I don't think. I think if you pay college, they're not going to pay high school players as much as they do. High school players already get money. Look at the AAU circuit for basketball. They're getting paid already. So, whatever. Put it in college. Let the colleges pay for them. It's the same colleges that have been good at football for the past 30 years. You can name them. I can name them. It's the big schools. It's always going to be Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State in the Big Ten. You can throw in Nebraska, possibly. I don't know if Nebraska, if they started paying players, if they would have boosters step up to pay at this point. I don't know. But Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State are going to have boosters that are going to pay players if the NCAA allows it. And they're going to stay at the top. How is that going to be any different? Like, if they're already paying them illegally, or they're going to start paying them the big money now, you just won't see schools like Clemson come out of nowhere with heavy rumors in an FBI courtroom talking about how they're paying players. Like, you won't see schools like that. You won't see the Ole Miss players. You'll see the schools like Alabama, where it's rumored now that Nick Saban refuses to talk to bagmen because he doesn't want to risk his reputation at this point in the game.
Yep.
Why not? Let him go. Maybe that's why Alabama's not been able to push through the finish line these last couple of years. I don't know at this point. But Alabama's always going to be there. Is Auburn always going to be there? Possibly. What about Florida? Florida State's going to be cream of the ACC. If you start paying players, does Miami get back into it? I don't know. I think it's better for college football if you make it a 16-team playoff and you let schools pay for players. Because they can only pay with the scholarship limit. You can only pay for so many anyway. These same schools are already getting the top talent. It's not going to make a difference. If anything, it's only going to even for some of the schools right now that are tweeners. Maybe like the NC States or the Virginia Techs that might be able to get some of these 4-star players that are now choosing Clemson. They weren't going to choose them before. So,
sign off at this point.
All right. So,
we're
go ahead.
Ready for dismissal here. I just want to let you get it back out there and check out the website. It's in great shape. Check out the store. There's a lot of stuff there that will get you ready for summer. And great talking with you as usual.
All right, thanks, Matt, for calling in, and we'll be back on with Matt next week. I just had 2 more topics after that. I mean, going back to the NCAA stuff, you have schools that are always going to pay for players or ones that are going to make enough money. And I think it incentivizes schools, too, to get donations, have fans actually come to the games because you get revenue from that. I think you'll see a better fan experience at some of the bigger schools, sure. But it also gives smaller schools a chance to build themselves up. You get some D1 schools that are going to go ahead and have a revival. Look at maybe Texas Tech around the Mike Leach years. Who's to say when they climbed all the way to number 3 in the country or whatever, that a bunch of young alums don't get together and put together a fund to fund some of these bigger recruits and they start pulling them from Texas. As it stands right now, it's very hard for small schools to build themselves back up. And if you make it legal and even the field, maybe a team like Pitt could come back and be successful once again. So I'm all for it, and we'll see what happens. But I think that is the next logical step. Let them go. if so-and-so's used car sales outside of Pittsburgh wants to offer an endorsement deal for a Pitt recruit, if he signs at Pitt, so be it. Maybe you'll get some of the Aliquippa kids to stay in the area, and it will help out their recruiting. I don't know at this point, but we'll see. Getting into a wrap-up, we had the NBA playoffs. Getting ready for the finals, I had it on the docket, but we'll probably have to change the title of this show as we went long on the combine stuff and into some of the recruiting stuff. But NBA, Golden State sweeps through Portland without KD. So they're at the point where I talked about it in the fall. You don't even have to watch the NBA. You know it's going to be Golden State in the finals. Sure, they dropped, 4 games total this playoffs, 2 to the Rockets and 2 to, I'm blanking on the team they played first because it didn't matter. You knew that wasn't going to be an upset. So you have one team already settled. The other side, the Eastern Conference, with Milwaukee and the Raptors, they're in a great battle right now for a series. My only downside is I feel like it doesn't matter. They're going to lose. Whoever wins that series is going to lose in 4 or 5 games in the finals. So the NBA really needs to rebalance it. If you look at it, both of the teams in the East have, one All-Star or so on their team. The entire Golden State team at one point this year was made up of All-Stars. Sure, KD might not be out and they lost Boogie, but can you imagine if a team full of All-Stars is playing an upstart? That's what the NBA Finals is. So you can't tell me that college football can't do a 16-team playoff because the 16 versus 1 would be an all-star team versus a regular team. That's round 1 of the playoffs. This is the NBA Finals. It's going to be a showdown like that. So bring it on. I think we'll see. I would be shocked if there's an upset, and I think it would be better for the NBA if there was an upset. But at this point, with LeBron out west, I think that's the worst thing for the NBA. And I hate all the LeBron coverage, too, that everyone puts out there. But at this point, they really need to get someone out there to balance their schedule or just get rid of divisions. Get rid of East and West. I'm a big fan of pods. Just do them as pods and then rotate it based on seeding or something. Something to clean this up, because you can say the same for hockey, but because you're getting the same matchups in the first round of the playoffs almost every year or so. Expand it a little bit. You have Boston sweeps Carolina. I was really hoping that Carolina would be able to get some of that momentum going and make it a 7-game series, or at least win 1 or 2 at home. They couldn't get it done. Great run for them. But I don't know if I actually made my prediction on the show, but I thought the Blues would be the team that would make their run. And if they can get by the Sharks here, they have a chance to get it done. I just think that they've been solid. They came out flat against the Sharks off the bat, so I thought, oh, God, the Sharks are going to rail them. But, of course, they battled back. Blues should win, but you never know in hockey. And I think that's what balances it out, and that's what's missing right now in the NBA. If the NBA went to a pod system where you had like a northeastern pod of like Toronto, Boston, Philly, and someone else up there, and then maybe like the Knicks or something, like a couple big markets right there that are battling it out for a playoff spot, then you have like a more regional pod in the South where it's like the Charlotte team, Orlando, Miami, and another team down here. I can't even think of where all the cities are. Maybe you throw in Memphis or something. And then you just keep going all the way across the country so that you have these little pods. So some years Miami might be able to make a run. They finish with a great record. Great. Maybe they're going to be teamed up in the playoffs against Golden State off the bat. The regional things worked great when travel was hard, but in the NBA, you're flying in planes back and forth, back and forth. Just make it 2-3-2. I mean, if you're gonna be worried about travel, do the pod system, because right now, as it stands, the East-West thing is getting brutal the past couple of years. Once LeBron teamed up on the Miami Heat, at that point, they had some good matchups with the Spurs and the Mavs, but once other teams saw that you could do that, and I guess were the Celtics kind of first. They did it too, where they have a couple superstars all come together, and now players are just teaming up in the off season without doing any trades or anything. They're just restructuring their contracts so they're up at the same time, so that they can all pick a new team. You're going to have to get rid of East and West. I think that's the only way you balance it out. The NHL doesn't have that problem right now, so their playoffs are still exciting as there are a ton of upsets. But in the NBA, you're having the favorites win every round. They're playing the same teams every year in the finals. Wouldn't you like to see maybe Houston be the finals matchup instead, or another team that might be able to give it a shot? I don't know if Houston, then you'd have to look at the seeding anyway. I don't know what a pod system would look like, and I don't know if I'd have time to sketch it out, but that's my final thought. I didn't really have anything for the final bell. Actually, I did. It was the Francois thing, but I wanted to make sure that Matt heard it because I didn't know if he'd be here for the end of the show. But definitely, if you listen to the show, make sure you subscribe on your podcast host. You have iTunes, Stitcher, what else are we on? TuneIn. There's a couple different ones that you can subscribe to. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like it. I saw we had a 5-star rating. Those are great for us if you put it out there. But we're working on getting some other stuff out there on our website, southboundsports.com. So you can follow us there. Same on our social media. And thank you for listening. We will see you next week.